Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Boom Comic Source collaboration. It's your DC Spotlight for the week of April 8th, 2026. I thought overall it was a really, really strong week. Actually, had a trouble picking my top five because,
Okay.
probably with the exception of two books, I thought I really, really enjoyed everything. And to me, there was a big discrepancy. Like, there's nine books this week, so there's my rank number nine book, which I didn't really care for at all. My rank number eight book, which I didn't really care for at all, and then a big huge gap, and then my number like seven through one, which I enjoyed very very much. So I cheated a little bit with my rankings. You'll see what I mean when we get there. But yeah, I thought it was a fantastic week overall, and kind of in keeping with trying to not necessarily release more content because I'm not looking to do more kind of things, but just, I've said it many times. There's so many books that I want to read and review and talk about and what have you. And I've been focusing on that, the return of Spawn Daily, which I'm going to re-release, all whatever 100 and something episodes that I had up through like Spawn 78 or something like that I had, and all the mini series and everything that happened early days of Spawn. And this is chronological, not publishing wise. But anyway, it's well over 100. I'm going to re-release those, and that gives me a little bit of runway to start recording the new ones. So that's coming. That's out every day. So I head over to the Comic Source YouTube channel, look for the Spawn reading order playlist. You can follow along if you've ever wanted to read Spawn. So between that and doing at least one Marvel review every week, doing at least one indie review every week, plus my regular interviews and whatever, I've been reading more comics than ever. I'm not quite up to my goal of reading 10 comics a day for the year, but I'm getting close to hopefully get caught up with that.
Wow.
So I can say, by the end of the year, I'll have read, over 6,000 or 3,600 comics. Um,
Wow.
so anyway, I say all that to say that I've been having a lot of fun. It's been a really great week reading not just DC, but independent and Marvel as well. Then kind of on that, going hand in hand with that, kind of upgrading my setup for video and what have you. I don't know if I look any different to everybody, but didn't upgrade my camera, but I upgraded my lighting, which I found make like such a huge difference. Which you say, oh yeah, duh, right? But it's been something I've wanted to do for a long time. I just haven't taken the time because it's complicated, right? Like you have to have people, behind the scenes, whatever, probably don't care about this, but like technically if you're using a green screen, you need to light the green screen with different lights than you light the subject with and all that. Like it gets super complicated, and it's a matter of space for a lot of these things. So my studio looks much more cramped these days as it were. But I say all that to say I'm I do it because I love doing this and I love comics, and it's just been a really really productive and interesting week. So
That's
again, hope
awesome.
everybody's following the Comic Source YouTube channel for all the other content that I'm putting out. Um, and of course, obviously, we'll continue to do the DC Spotlight here on Rocky's Comic Boom YouTube channel every week, because this is a real highlight of the week for me, and I think DC is continuing to fire on all cylinders. We have another new number one this week that's in the next level kind of area or publishing initiative for DC. And I'll talk a little bit more about it when we get to it. Firestorm, who's always been a obscure but favorite character of mine. Um, but I think there's a lot of people that are kind of in the same boat as me, where they Firestorm's been a mess for a while. DC hasn't been able to fix him, um, and it's just good to see him back in the pages of his own comic. So, like I said, great week overall, I thought, and we'll find out what Rocky thought of the week overall. What do you think, Rocky?
I thought it was a really good week. I did. I enjoyed it. I actually, when I'm looking at all I ranking my comics 1 through 9, I'm still thinking. I know I gave you, just so people know, I give Jace my random top five in no particular order, my top five, but in a different order. But that could change. But I know that could change before we get to the end of these reviews today, because all 9 of them, I enjoyed all 9 comics this week. That is to say, they were all good. I thought they were good. And again, I'm used to great with DC. and I mean, I had a tough time choosing my top five. My top five might change. There's one in particular. I'm second guessing myself even as I'm talking to you now. But what a wonderful problem to have. But no, I enjoyed this week, and yeah, I don't read. I can't see myself having enough time to read 10 comics a day. But considering you and I usually read anywhere from 10 to 17 comics a week, just on DC, depending on how crazy DC gets, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah,
Right.
it really is. I feel very fortunate to be, in a position where we get to read these books and share our thoughts with everybody out there in the audience. And like I said, not just DC, but just comics in general. We've talked in the past about how a little bit of the speculator market, a little bit of excitement, what have you. Absolute Batman and the rest of the absolute titles certainly, can take some credit for that, for driving people into the shops. And we've been saying it for years. Comics really needs more readers and younger readers, and that's happening. But I'm also finding that even older people are coming to comics in an interesting way. Like I know somebody who came to comics a few years ago, but more on the like for the collectability of it. They were sort of chasing the hot thing or whatever, because they came over from kind of sports cards, collectible cards kind of thing. And but they weren't reading them. They were just buying whatever the hot variant cover, and mostly it was X-Men stuff and specifically Wolverine. But now I guess they figured, well, as long as I'm buying them, like maybe I should open them up and read them, whatever. And now they're following the independent stuff I do, and commenting on the videos and picking stuff up and actually reading it, as opposed to just buying it for the collectability, which is fun. And there's no wrong way to collect. Um, and obviously there's plenty of channels. We've talked about this recently as well. There's plenty of channels out there that focus on the collectability side of it. Whether it's Swagglehoss or Bryce Comics or Bronzeville Comics, or plenty of them out there that focus on grading comics and collectability. Comic Tom is another one. But
Lots.
there's fewer of us that dive into the stories themselves. And it's fine to do both. There's no wrong way to collect, in my mind, as long as you're reading comics. So anyway, let's get into the first book we're going to talk about. It's not in my top five. It's one of the ones I mentioned that I didn't really enjoy that much. It came in at number 8 for me. But I will say that there's a couple of banger variant covers. Rocky's got them up on the screen if you check us out on YouTube. The Tula Lotte cover that's behind his head is great, and the Derek Chu one that's in the middle. With Catwoman. So whenever Rocky complains about a DC comic where Selena Kyle's in it and she's not sexy enough, this is what he's talking about, right? Like this
Not
is
not on
sexy
this
Selena Kyle.
comic. She's
Yeah,
hot in this one.
yeah. But I'm saying when you're referring to sexy Selena Kyle,
Yeah,
if anybody wants to know what that means, what sexy Selena Kyle means, you just look at this image. This
absolutely.
is what sexy Selena Kyle looks like, and,
Yeah.
and she's awesome, and it is an intrinsic part of who the character is. So it's a valid criticism sometimes when she looks like a 7-year-old boy. Um, that's not leveraging that part of the character. So um, this is from writer Tini Howard, along with Babs Tarr on art, contributing to the story as well. Miguel Muerto on colors, and Becca Carey on letters. And this is so funny because when this was announced at New York Comic Con, I was in the room, and I was live tweeting whatever, and Rocky had sent me a text saying he didn't really know if this was going to work and expressing reservations. And I was the one like, oh, let's give it a chance, whatever. I think it's working for him and not for me, which is so
Yeah,
interesting.
very much so.
I'm
Yeah.
just not. Yeah, I don't, and it's not completely unexpected for me. But I'm also not a huge fan of these characters, like Gotham City Sirens, which is where this gets its title from. Previous um, team book with Black Canary and Harley and Ivy and Catwoman. I'm just not a big fan of those types of books. It's just not my thing. So it's not completely unexpected for me to not really enjoy this. Um, but yeah, it's just not. I'm not the target. This is not me. This is not for me. At the end of the day, but I will say that the art is gorgeous and the pacing is done really well. Even if the story is not really speaking to me. But anyway, like I said, comes in at number 8 for me. I am curious enough about the villainess here, who doesn't really have a name.
Horoscope. That kind of goes by
horoscope. Yeah. Harley calls her horoscope at one point. I don't know. That's a horrible villain name, to be honest with you. So I don't know if that'll stick or if she'll come up with something else. She's probably the most interesting part about the book, and I am a little curious to learn more about her. But that's kind of where it stops. I feel like, in terms of the relationship between the other sirens here, it's not really that memorable. But again, the art and the color work is top notch. So anyway, it was in your top 5, assuming you this is not the one falling out, Rocky. But give us your thoughts on it.
Yeah, it actually is just out of my top 5. I could actually. It's really tough. I want to put it in my top 5. It deserves to be in there, just because how much I enjoyed this. But it is just out. I could change. But in any event,
I'll just tell you right now. As mentioned, I cheated. So I have 6 books in my top 5. I put 2 of them at 5, so I could, because I thought 6 were deserving to be in the top 5.
Well, I could put this at 5 then, because look, first of all, shout out to Babs Tarr, who in my conversation, you alluded to our conversations before this series even came out. I had doubts whether Babs Tarr was going to be able to pull it off artistically for my liking. Boy, was I was so wonderfully pleasantly surprised. This is sexy as hell. This is her best work ever. I have always sort of thought she was a little bit too stylistic for me, but no. Talk about a sexy Catwoman, and I generally, I'm not I'm like a lot of people. I'm a kind of a long time comic book fan. I don't like when they change my character. I'm used to like typical Selena Kyle. And making her black, I thought, well, why do that? But oh my God, make her black, man. She looks hot. I mean, who doesn't love Halle Berry? But Halle Berry's Catwoman didn't really, the movie wasn't that great. But this is a really sexy Catwoman. But kudos to Tini Howard. Babs Tarr does a great job. Beautifully illustrating Tini Howard's story. This is the best story. This is the best that Tini Howard has written a story. In my view, I enjoyed this more than even Tini Howard's Catwoman run, which I very hit and miss with, mostly miss. I thought this is very. I really like the character work here. It's Black Label. It's out of continuity, but it's very much focusing on the relationships between all of them. Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, and then you got Black Canary having an up and down relationship with Oliver Queen. You got Catwoman having some problems with Batman and slash Bruce Wayne, and there's a lot of tension. All those. The dysfunctional nature of all of these interpersonal relationships are all sort of like the coding is that this all takes place with them trying to take down this horoscope who kills women. This horoscope is basically a glorified psychologist, and she's basically killing off her patients whose dates of birth are in particular months. So she's kind of going through the horoscope and she's killing off a Capricorn and Aries, et cetera, and Pisces and Leo, et cetera. And so she's a little bit loopy, but it's done in such a way that my primary interest in this is how these relationships are progressing, and I think it really works well, and I find myself entertained, and I actually find it comical, and I find it's a fun read. I'm having fun reading this, and I have to say that I'm not a huge fan of the Harley Quinn Poison Ivy pairing. But here it actually kind of works in a way that because they're just sort of they're finally finding each other attractive. This is sort of a formative part of the relationship. In any event, I think it works, and of course so not only am I enjoying the story, but there's a connecting covers by Tula Lotay, which I'm getting. And the cover A's are great. All the covers are awesome. So yeah, not only am I enjoying the story, I'm pleasantly surprised when I go in, and this literally, I was going to say it definitely went against I expected to not enjoy this. I love it. Not, and I don't think it's good. I think it's just fun because I like romance in comics. I just do. In fact, I just dropped about $50 on romance comics from my local comic dealer. He's got a bunch of old DC romance and some of those covers where the women are crying, reminding me of the old Lichtenstein portraits. Anyways, so I spent some money on romance comics this past weekend. But in any event, I enjoy this, and so I'm gonna squeeze it in. I'm gonna squeeze it in number 5 for me.
Fantastic. I will. I forgot to mention one of the things that is kind of interesting. I think because it's Gotham City, and it is dealing with dates. Because it's astrology, horoscope, whatever. I get a little bit of a Calendar Man vibe, like Long
For
Halloween
horoscope, yeah.
from the villainess horoscope. God, I hope that doesn't stick as her villainous name. Like I said, it's so cringy. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Bleeding Hearts #3 from writer Dennis Camp. Stephen Morian on art, including the line work and pencils and all that. Matt Hollingsworth on the colors, and then Hassan Otsman Elhal on letters. This is one of the ones that I went back and forth. Like, am I going to put this in my top 5? And ultimately, yeah, it did make my top 5. It's tied at number 5 with another book that we'll talk about a little bit later. But we got confirmation. Rocky and I speculated on this last week, just based on the fact that issue 1 was really told from the perspective of the zombies. And then Poke, specifically, who's a zombie who apparently has a beating heart in a way, even though he's a zombie, which, inherently implies that he's not alive. He's not supposed to have feelings, what have you. And Dennis Camp has done a fantastic job giving us the perspective of Poke, and you wouldn't think of a zombie as being relatable and empathetic, but yet Poke is when he's talking about, he discovers at the end of this the first issue, he discovers a woman and her child, her very young child, who are still alive. He doesn't tell the horde, the rest of the zombies, about it so they can all feast, because there's very few humans left alive, which is interesting when you think about that as well, like what's going to be their food source if they eat all the humans, what have you. But then issue 2 was from the perspective of the woman I was talking about and her young daughter. And now with issue 3, we switch back to the perspective of Poke. But one of the things that we mentioned was how there seemed to be a lack of an ability for the zombie to communicate with the humans, which it's a little bit of a plot device. Wouldn't go so far as to say a cheat, but that language barrier, that communication barrier, sort of feeds the dramatic tension in a lot of ways. If they were able to speak the same language, and this isn't necessarily like, okay, at least so far from what we've seen, a situation where, somebody's speaking English and somebody's speaking Chinese, right? And through context, you hope you can understand eventually. In this issue, which is told from the perspective of Poke, whenever he hears the humans speaking to each other in English, because, this is an American comic, so that's what we're getting. We're getting, English words here in the word balloons. And to us, it seems like they're speaking the same language, but obviously they're not. When Poke hears them speaking, it just comes out as little squeaks and screeches. Eek, 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 eek. So it's not a situation where you can, at least it seems like the way that it's rendered here, where there could eventually be, okay, well, I've learned the language. I've learned the zombie language, or Poke has learned English, whatever, so they can communicate. So there's an inherent distrust from the mother, because she's just been conditioned to believe that all zombies are horrible. Poke can't possibly be helping them or whatever. But in this issue, a situation arises where it becomes so obvious and so apparent that Poke is trying to help them. But even he has guilt for that. Like, why he doesn't understand what these feelings are, what these emotions are that he's feeling, why he wants to protect this mother and daughter. And then there's guilt because he technically is betraying his own kind, who, very much is hungry and needs to eat. And yet he's hiding this woman and daughter from them. So again, confirmation, as Rocky and I suspected, that they can't communicate. They don't speak the same language, which creates and this isn't the most original idea. It's been done, time and time again in various stories here or there, where you have two people that are kind of on opposite sides of a conflict who have no way to verbally communicate with each other, and they have to find a way to work together toward a common goal. But again, what's so interesting is the obviously the goal of the mother and the daughter is to stay alive and avoid the zombies, which is just like why would that be Poke's goal? That's what's so fascinating. And even as I said, he doesn't understand it. He doesn't understand why he has the beating heart. He doesn't understand why he's having the feelings that he's having. And in a way, he's questioning his own actions, which is really interesting. So you wouldn't necessarily think that. I didn't have it on my bingo card anyway. That in 2026, I was going to read a DC comic where I was sympathizing with a zombie and relating to a zombie in terms of that sort of, because in a way, it's a little bit of an analog for a coming of age story, right? Like especially traditionally, when you talk about exploring the human condition, you talk about coming of age. It's somebody in adolescence, right? That's experiencing new things for the first time. Whether it's physical changes in your body because you're going through puberty and that kind of thing, and the emotions that go along with that, or discovering a first love and what that does and everything, and discovering who you are and everything that comes along with that, right? That turbulent time where you're trying to find your identity. And here we are with Poke, a zombie who in a way is going through the same thing. And then on top of that makes me think, well, is he the next evolution? Is he what all zombies will eventually become, where they'll all have feelings and they'll all have beating hearts or what have you? So they're really interesting questions to ask. And then you go back to the title of the book itself, bleeding hearts, right? It's not bleeding heart. It's not just Poke. So who exactly are the bleeding hearts? Obviously Poke being, the obvious one, but who else does that apply to? So really interesting kind of perspective from Dennis Camp, the writer, and I'm really, really curious to see how people are going to react, and I'm even more curious to see where this goes moving forward. So I thought it was fantastic. I think it's so tough because a lot of these Vertigo titles that are coming out now are really, really good, and it's kind of a situation where we've had in the past would say, well, when Absolute first started, you remember, Rocky, like, which Absolute titles are our favorite? Well, whichever one we read last is our favorite. I'm kind of feeling the same way about these Vertigo titles, whether it's
pretty good.
Nice House series from James Tynion, or it's End of Life from Kyle Starks, or it's Bleeding Hearts from Dennis Camp. So yeah, I'm really, really enjoying this. I thought it was fantastic. So what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, not a heck of a. I was going to say not necessarily a lot happened in this issue, but it's really just watching the interactions and watching the language barrier. I mean, it's interesting. Cope or what's his name again?
Poke.
Pokes, thank you. Poke says that humans almost sound like birds chirping, or birds, or mice, and so and he can tell that they're clearly that the mother is and the child are trying to communicate with him. They seem to be saying something. One has to wonder: is Poke's evolution static? Is he still evolving as his heart continues to bleed or beat, or is he eventually going to understand them because clearly Poke's going through something? Is this something that's restricted to only Poke? Like you said, is this something that other zombies are going to experience as well? Also, as the human race slowly dies out because they're getting eaten by zombies, which are really the zombies appear to be the new human race, or the new race that have taken over the planet. What's the fate of humanity? What's the point of just, if humanity is shrinking, what's Poke's role in that? And if there's zombies and there's humans that are dying out, is Poke a new life form? Where exactly is this going? It's still not clear to me where this story is going, but it's got me captivated because right now I'm really curious as Poke's evolution as a character and his obviously his relationship with this mother and a child are going to probably underscore a central part of this story. But what's the larger story? What's going on in the larger scene? I don't really know. Maybe we're just going to be. Maybe we're just going to focus on these character moments, much like in Walking Dead. The larger part of the what's happening in the world is always a mystery in the Walking Dead series, and because it's so character based. But in any event, Dennis Camp does a really good job here, and I think he's clearly taking some. He's sort of observed all the right lessons from the success of Kirkman's Walking Dead because he's focusing on character moments, and it really works. And of course, it really helps that he's got a fantastic artist with Stepan Morian along the way helping him do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's even a gathering of zombies here where they're discussing which is so interesting when you think about it, right? Like, it's a group of zombies and they're discussing or debating whether humans have a consciousness. Because Rocky mentioned them sounding like mice or birds, and yeah, there's some zombies that believe that they have to put it in the words of the zombies or the conceptual idea of the zombies, they have a rudimentary consciousness. And there's other zombies that believe they don't have any awareness or consciousness at all, right? So again, it goes back to the idea of language and being able to communicate in that language barrier, misunderstanding, which, I mean, if we extrapolate this out and look at the world today, right? All these different factions, divisiveness that can't seem to get along. And it's because there's such a lack of empathy in the world these days. And this is kind of an analog for that, which is interesting from that perspective as well.
I want to give a shout out to every one of the covers. There's two variant covers that they're both. I think they're both fantastic. So it's again very tempting cover buys here. Cover A is pretty good, but cover B and C are pretty damn good too.
Yeah, the one behind me is by Steven Subic, and then the one in the middle there is by Numit Malavia. So yeah, really really great covers overall. All right, up next our new number one from DC Next Level. It's The Fury of Firestorm, issue number 1, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Rafael de la Torre, colors by Marcelo Maiello, letters by Lucas Gattoni. As I said, I'm a big Firestorm fan, and I feel like when it was classic Firestorm was when it was at its best. Created by Jerry Conway, the idea of a matrix of two beings, one kind of in charge physically, and the other kind of just an observer. Third-person observer riding along, but able to give advice, what have you. Specifically being Ronnie Raymond and Professor Martin Stein. But I don't know. Like, after a while, I guess the sales started falling, and they started messing with it. They made it a Russian guy. They separated, and then they brought it back later, and it was a new teenager, a black teenager named Jason Rush. And then they said, oh, everybody's part of the Firestorm Matrix. I don't know. It became really convoluted and messy, and it seems like they haven't known what to do with the character for a long time. And I feel like going back to the classic way was the way forward. And I thought that's what this was going to be. Turns out we're going in a completely different direction. New things being revealed about the very origins of a Firestorm and who might have been responsible for the initial transformation or what have you. But either way, it's great to see Firestorm back in the pages of his own comic. The biggest disappointment for me is I found out recently this is only a 6-issue limited series, which I need more than that because again, very first world problem here. I'm complaining when DC put this in our kind of press portal. They actually put the first 3 issues in there. I've already read all of the first 3, and I'm like, wait, this is only halfway. This is only halfway. Like, no, you can't possibly give me the answers that I want. And I'm not saying that I want it to go a certain direction. It's just saying how we're halfway through and it feels like the story's barely gotten started. How can it only go through 3 more issues? So I say that to say I hope this sells really, really well so that it continues beyond that. Because we've seen this happen before, right? Like Swamp Thing, I think, being an example. Poison Ivy from Jewel Wilson being another example of series that were supposed to be limited but went a lot longer based on critical acclaim and sales. So if I have any nitpick, it's the art. Again, I'm thinking back to classic Jerry Conway era Firestorm, Pat Broderick a lot of times doing the artwork. Very, very brightly colored and traditionally super heroic. This is a bit of a darker tale in a lot of ways. So in that way, the more textured art of Rafael de la Torre does work. But at the same time, there's part of me maybe the nostalgic part that wishes this was colored a little more brightly and had art that was a little bit more super heroic. But again, the artwork does work for what we're getting, but what we're getting is pretty dark in a lot of ways. It's a Firestorm that apparently neither Ronnie nor Martin Stein are in charge. Ronnie seems to be trapped in some way, and I mean, it starts off with the first issue, and this was teased months ago that Firestorm just shows up at this town in Colorado, turns everybody to chalk, eventually like kills thousands of people. And you're like, no, why have you turned Firestorm into a murderer? He's he's supposed to be a hero. So the U.S. military goes there. They're trying to talk to him. They go and recruit Lorraine Riley. Longtime Firestorm fans will recognize that name as the alter ego of Firehawk, who's another sort of nuclear powered character. And I've always loved her design. I think she looks fantastic. She's gorgeous, wonderful design. So she goes and tries to help the military sort of talk Firestorm down. And in speaking to Firestorm, she realizes that, hey, this is not Ronnie, because supposedly this was, Firestorm's girlfriend. Firehawk was the analog, the female counterpart, if you will, to Firestorm. And she realizes, despite it looking like Ronnie, that it's not. And she goes in search of Professor Stein to try to figure out what's going on. And that's partly what we see in issues 2 and 3. But really interesting. And we as readers find out that, Ronnie's trapped in some way. This is a different situation, a different status quo. In my mind, I like this because it's Firestorm, and I love Firestorm as a character. Jeff Lemire's going a little more complicated with it, which I think has been the problem. DC, don't overthink Firestorm, DC. You're overthinking it here. But that's not to say that Jeff Lemire can't give us an interesting story and maybe bring us back to some semblance of status quo that's closer to when Firestorm did work as a character. Then also, you don't just want to, you can't just go back and relive that. Like if I want to go back and look at the classic era of Firestorm, I can go back and reread those stories. I still have my run or whatever. So, you don't want them to do the exact same thing. But again, I only say that to say this is a pretty dark and cynical story in a lot of ways. And I just don't know that that's where Firestorm works when he's at his best. I mean, in that series, the classic series that I mentioned, Ronnie was still in high school. And he was kind of young and learning the ropes. And I think that's kind of why it worked with Professor Stein as kind of a mentor for him, not just in being Firestorm, but just in life, giving him life advice and what have you. And I think it really worked in that way that, Spider-Man worked. Amazing Spider-Man worked back in the day when going through teenage problems and what have you with Peter Parker. So going to be interesting to see. Again, I don't know how it gets to a point in only 6 issues where we have any semblance of story, because that is one of the things that I've noticed about Lemire's writing lately is when it comes to these stories where there's a little more depth in the emotion of the story and the conflict, they tend to be paced a little slower. I wouldn't go so far as to say this is slowly paced, but there's such, as I said, complicated and big ideas and such emotionality and such depth to it that it kind of inherently takes time to explore that. And again, I just don't see how it gets to where it needs to get in 6 issues. So I really enjoyed this. This is without question my favorite next level book that's come out so far. But again, I recognize the fact that I might be biased because I'm seeing one of my favorite characters from when I was a kid back in the pages of his own comic. He's starring in his own book, because it's not like he disappeared from the DC universe. Firestorm has shown up here and there, most recently in Justice League Unlimited, but just as, not even barely speaking parts, right? Just like showing up, he's helping out with whatever the latest crisis is. And we see him in the background doing the thing, changing the air into water to put out fires and, stuff like that. But certainly no spotlight on him, no idea of what he's really been up to. And I assumed anyway, that it was the Ronnie Raymond Professor Stein version, because he looked white as opposed to the Jason Rush version of Firestorm, where he looked like an African-American guy. But yeah, I didn't think anything was going on with Firestorm necessarily. So that's another part of this next level initiative, bringing the spotlight back to some of these characters, to kind of introduce them to new readers. But whatever's going on with Firestorm, that's the other question that we have. because we get some hints about what's going on, but we have no hints or clues at all about why it's happening. So that's something else where I'm just like, God, is 3 more issues going to be enough to really explore this? But anyway, I really enjoyed it. I think it came in at number, in my top 3, because again, I'm just such a sucker for Firestorm. I freely admit my bias. So anyway, what do you think of it, Rocky?
It was okay. It was all right. It was funny. My initial impression when I first read it was, this is really predictable. It didn't surprise me at all. And I thought I'd read this story before. Haven't I read Firestorm stories before where he's done evil things? I could have sworn at the end of that Conway run, which was 70 some odd issues, I think it was, or maybe it was 90 or something. Anyways, I thought he went through this phase. But in any event, the Firestorm Matrix tells Ronnie Raymond at the end that I no longer belong to you, Ronnie. Professor Stein is not part of the Matrix anymore. It's not a dual Matrix. Ronnie Raymond appears to be killed by this Firestorm Matrix. So whoever is in control of the Firestorm Matrix, it's not Ronnie and it's not Professor Stein. Ronnie Raymond appears to ostensibly be killed at the end of this. So who's in control of the Firestorm Matrix? We don't know. But if this is only a 6-issue series, one has to wonder what's the point of doing this unless you really want to set up a new status quo. The other thing about Firestorm is that Firestorm, in many ways, I've always felt that to a certain extent, he's always been he's got a similar power set to Captain Atom in many ways, but he's Captain Atom but with a sense of humor. Because he either had Ronnie Raymond or Jason Rash or whatever, and so he was just a more down to earth sort of person as opposed to Captain Atom, because they got similar powers of transmutation. So I'm not sure really what the point of this is. Going next level, in many ways, the way that this next level Firestorm is portrayed, because he's darker, he destroys an entire town. Well, why is he doing that? Why did he destroy an entire town? What was the point? Bringing Firehawk on. I mean, she's cool, she's hot, she's sexy. That's kind of cool. But I don't really have a sense as to where this is going. And looking for Professor Stein. Okay, so Professor Stein's going to come back, and what exactly? Is Firestorm's sanity going to be restored? Okay, I guess. But it's weird because, honestly, of all the characters in the DC universe that I would have chosen for a next level focus, Firestorm wouldn't have been in my top 10. But I don't mind it. But this kind of reads like if this was an absolute Firestorm first issue, where it's this dark, he blows up an entire town. He's an evil looking Matrix, maybe conflicting with two human hosts that he's trying to struggle with. It almost, it has a little bit of an, you could have convinced me this was an absolute title, but in any event, it's got my attention. It's got my curiosity and my attention, as the saying goes. But so I like the art. Because I think it sort of fits the moodier, darker tone. I really like Lorraine O'Reilly, Firehawk. I think she knows Ronnie. She has some compassion for him. This does have violence in it. I mean, they're going to have to prove that Ronnie Raymond is not part of the Firestorm Matrix, because clearly Firestorm has crossed the Rubicon here. He's wiped out. He seems to have wiped out an entire town. We've talked about Captain Atom. Everyone's worried about Captain Atom. He's got similar powers to like Dr. Manhattan. Captain Atom could wipe out the universe if he wanted to in the blink of an eye. And in fact, he practically did that in that Tom King one with Captain Atom and the Spirit of the 20th Century there, Jenny Sparks. And here Firestorm is equally, he's not maybe as dangerous, but he's pretty dangerous. And so I know what the first 3 issues hold as well. And I'm really curious as to where this is all going to go. And I'm really curious to see how the general, like a lot of the fans, because we haven't had a Firestorm series for a long time. I wonder what the general comic book collecting fans out there, are going to feel about this title, because the other ones have sold really well, sales, and I hope Firestorm does as well, because this is a way to really capture the reader's attention. And I think that if there was any way to capture somebody's attention, this is a pretty good setup issue. This sort of pulls you in. It's like, ooh. And it gives you the background. It's new reader friendly. It gives you all the stuff you need to know. And Firestorm is kind of he's kick-ass and he's badass, and but where's it going to go? So we'll see.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned Absolute. I think when I first read this, I got a little bit of Absolute vibe as well. And I wonder. So is Firestorm the character that allows the crossover? You know what I mean? Like maybe this is Absolute Firestorm. I mean, he is so powerful, as you mentioned.
Yeah. Well, in fact, you mentioned that to me. Yeah, because wouldn't that be cool? I think you said, wouldn't it be cool if this series ended with him going over to the Absolute universe, or he's that'd be cool.
No,
that would.
Yeah. I freely admit
that'd be cool.
In my mind, part of the reason I would want that to happen, first of all, it would be a huge surprise, right? Like, whether this sells really well or not, and you did mention the previous Next Level titles, first couple issues have sold really well. There's no way this sells as well, because it doesn't say Absolute Firestorm on it. It just says Firestorm. But what happens issue 6 comes out and this was a stealth Absolute title? Could you imagine?
Yeah.
The first 5 issues would shoot up. Everybody
shoot up
would be
in
trying
praise.
to hunt them down and find them, whatever. Because it turns out this is Absolute Firestorm, not regular Firestorm. What an incredible editorial idea and trick that would be.
Yeah.
I imagine they're just going to face some backlash. Oh, a secret Absolute title, whatever. But it would make sense. But again, part of it is me selfishly wanting this. Oh, it can't. Don't even associate Firestorm's name and identity with having murdered all these people.
Yeah. So
part of it is that. But again, being that it's so dark in the tone, you're 100% right. This feels like it would suit the Absolute title. And yeah, we did talk about this when it first got in our press portal a few months ago or whatever, and I read the first 3 right away. And yeah, that's kind of what I thought. Let this be a stealth Absolute title. It would be so cool. It would be such a cool idea to do that. So probably too cool to actually happen, but I can dream. Anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have The Nice House by the Sea, issue number 9 from writer James Tynion IV. Alvaro Martinez Bueno handles the art, Jordi Blair on colors and world design, doing the lettering. And I'm just pulling up the variant covers in front of me now to see if there's anything that really... just one Fernando Blanco variant. It's really cool, though. It's like Walter walking out into the ocean. But yeah, this is tied for me at number 5. I just feel like it definitely deserved to be in the top 5, but I just couldn't decide between this and Bleeding Hearts, so I've got them tied at number 5. But this didn't enter your top 5, Rocky, so I'm curious if you have any thoughts on it.
But like I said, I enjoyed every comic I read this week, and I put this in at number 7, but I enjoyed it. It's really building the suspense. I got to tell you, I always struggle. It's hard for me to summarize, just even giving a synopsis. If you haven't been reading Nice House by the Lake, if you didn't read Nice House by the Lake and you haven't been reading Nice House by the Sea, it's hard to give a quick synopsis where somebody just listening can jump right in. But let's just say that it's getting very interesting. These two groups of people that were both have their own little enclaves, both saved by different aliens named Walter and Alex and
Max.
So, thank you, Walter and Max, and they both created their own groups of people to save because the Earth is essentially ostensibly destroyed, but only one of them can ultimately be saved. And the way these two houses are essentially kind of at war with each other, and Max's house has sort of attacks Walter's house, but they were incapacitated. And meanwhile, you got a lot of this inner turmoil going on. And there's so many characters to get control of. In fact, there's a number of scenes here where, if I didn't know better, I think Tynion was going out of his way to help explain who some of the characters are. I think because there's a lot of moving parts here, and the way these characters interact, and they all have their there's potential hidden agendas here as well, because again, everyone wants to. We know that there's multiple houses where different aliens from this alien race have saved like 10 people. They've randomly chosen 10 people with very specific skill sets for their group, but only one of them can ultimately be saved. And we've just been we've been dealing with the Nice House by the Lake for the first 12 issues, and now we're at Nice House by the Sea. The interactions, the character work is so well done. I'm invested in this story. I very much want to. I'm still trying to. I know that there was supposed to be a hardcover of the first 12 issues of Nice House by the Lake. I still don't have that hardcover. I haven't been able to find it. Or maybe there isn't one, and maybe I'm just maybe it's just wishing there was. But
yeah, I'm pretty sure there is one.
Yeah, I can't seem to acquire it, but I want that. But this is going to be so awesome. This is a Netflix series waiting to explode. And thankfully, I hear James Tynion has all kinds of deals going on with. I think is it Amazon or Netflix? Anyways, people can Google that. But in any event, this is a high recommend for a series to pick up. But obviously, if guys pick it up on back issues, pick up the first series in trades. If you can get it economically on Amazon, pick it up. You won't be disappointed. But you'll want to watch this from the beginning. Or read this from the beginning.
There's a number of hardcovers, including one on Amazon for only $27 for hardcover. You can get the trade again at the US. I know Canadian Amazon's a little bit different. You can get the paperback version for $11.81 on Amazon plus shipping, unless you have Prime. Shipping's free. So yeah, you definitely pick it up. Definitely recommended. And it is a complicated story, as Rocky said. And they started putting these little kind of identification cards in the back of each issue, which I really appreciate. One of them for Max's house, another for Walter's house, with everybody identified by their nickname and then their actual name, which I really appreciate because this is a problem that Torrin Grunbeck's Catwoman run had early on, right? Like there's all these characters, such a huge cast of characters, but they don't have costumes, right? They're wearing regular clothes. Some of them look kind of similar. It's hard to identify.
Yeah, and there's a muted color palette too in the color, so it's really hard to tell a character sometimes.
It makes it tough. When eventually, not because I think it is a matter of when, not if. When this comes to another medium, it'll be a little bit easier to identify, just because it's going to be okay. This actor is this person, this actor is this person. Whatever, you become invested. Because certainly we follow shows, where it's a large cast of characters and what have you, and we don't get necessarily confused. But we're also watching that show probably at least once a week, as opposed to reading this once a month. Now, again, being a complicated story isn't in and of itself a bad thing, because one of the things that this series does, maybe better than any series I've ever read, is exploring the human condition and the character dynamics. Because yes, there are multiple houses. Yes, this alien race was, and this is not the newest idea or most original idea. Yes, they were supposed to go get the best of the best. Think of it as an arc, right? Like we've all seen those disaster films. What was it? Deep Impact, I think, with Tynion was one. Morgan Freeman's in it as well. Yeah. Where they got the best scientists and whatever, and they put them in an arc. They're going to be way underground, so that when the asteroid hit, it was a nuclear winter or whatever, these people would survive. So we've seen that idea before. Like idea of taking the best and the brightest. So that extrapolate that out. They take the top 10 people in their field, and they survive. And then of all the houses that survive, eventually only one will actually be allowed to exist. And whether they're supposed to repopulate the human race or not, we haven't gotten to that point. But we also know that Walter broke the rules, and he didn't go and get 10 of the best and brightest. He just got 10 people that he liked the most. His 10 closest friends throughout the time that he lived his life on Earth in disguise. As a Earthling, as opposed to him being an extraterrestrial. So super weird, dynamic, human character interaction, right? Yeah. So why is this so complicated? Well, because life itself is complicated. That's just the way that it is. And the bigger group of friends you have, and I want to be clear that certainly in the case of Walter's house, where it was people that knew Walter, that was what they had in common. and a lot of them knew each other ahead of time, but there were people that didn't know each other, even though they were all friends of Walter, right? Just like in your own, friend group in real life, you know people who don't necessarily know each other, but then you know people that do know each other, like people at work where it's, a group. So as opposed to the best and the brightest houses where it's yes, best and brightest, and maybe some of them are famous, based on who they are, and so they're aware of who the others are, but they don't necessarily have personal relationships going into it. Obviously, spending time at the end of the world with these people creates its own dynamic and its own level of stress and drama and whatever. So this book, the whole Nice in the House series and concept and idea, is probably the best example I can think of in comics of exploring the complicated nature of human relationships. It's just done fantastically, and I wouldn't want any other artist drawing it but Alvaro Montrines Bueno, because he does such a fantastic job with body language and character work and emotionality in the faces and what have you. And I think Tynion's even gone on record as saying he's not going to put out any issues of Nice House unless Alvaro draws it, which is why this has taken a little bit longer. Because when you look at it, you can understand why it may be sometimes Alvaro needs a break to get caught up or what have you, because it is so complicated and it is a big cast of characters, and there are these huge esoteric extraterrestrial alien ideas. And again, he's doing a fantastic job rendering it, and Jordi Belair on the colors does a great job as well.
There's a potential huge revelation in this issue. I don't know if you caught it there, but apparently there's some confusion. I think the house of Walter's house and Max's house, they have different recollections as to when Armageddon on Earth began.
Yep.
One thinks that happened in June, other thinks that happened in October. So you got to wonder, is the Earth even destroyed? That's what I'm wondering.
Well,
Are they just is this all deception on the part of the aliens? Like that.
Well, that was one of the things at the end, if I remember correctly, of Nice House, where it by the lake, where it got revealed that maybe this is just a trial run, as it were, and so is it just an experiment? And that's where I'm getting to the larger point of something where, for me, it was almost a light bulb moment when I was reading this issue. The whole idea of these aliens having the ability to end mankind, and I'm trying to remember am I just imagining this, or if it was the aliens passing judgment and saying, humanity doesn't deserve to continue to exist. We're going to take the best and the brightest. We're going to destroy the rest, and then possibly rebuild or not. I don't know if that's been revealed or what have you. But what is the motivation of the aliens, and why are they doing this? Are they just a kid with an ant farm who's just going and shaking the ant farm up and making the ants rebuild? Where the majority of the ants are going to have died when you do that? We don't know. But here's the thing that really got me in this issue, where I started. It really kind of flipped, and I think is really interesting, right? Like I've talked about this whole series being an examination of the human condition and character dynamics and motivations and jealousy and all sorts of different things, and what you would do if you could have any, because that's the other part about this, that they're in these houses and in a way they're sort of like magical genie lamps, where they just wish for something, and the next morning it's at the front door and they can have whatever they want. And now we're taking that even to another level in this, where they can look the Nice House by the sea. People have realized a long time ago that they could break the rules, make themselves look younger, and change their genders, do all kinds of crazy stuff. And now the Nice House by the lake, people have discovered that in this issue as well. So this idea of, if you're in this stressful situation as a human, how are you going to react? How are you going to interact with your fellow humans and whatever? So that's been like, okay, that's what this is about, right? In this particular issue, what's really coming to the forefront, and maybe I just missed this early on and should have caught it earlier, especially in the first Nice House by the lake, because of Walter being described in such a way of seeming like an emo human, right? Like somebody who really is into his emotions, and at various times when he's had falling out with various friends and romantic relationships, where he's been just devastated. He seems to just be such an emotional character. But we're projecting onto him as an alien, when really he's just pouting because he's not getting his way, and which 10 people he's going to pick. But as it's been revealed that these different aliens are in competition in a way, there's competition between Walter and Max to see whose house gets to survive or whatever. It's almost like it's it's being flipped in my mind with this issue where the most human characters, the most flawed characters in this book aren't the 10 people from Nice House by the Lake that were chosen to survive. And they're not the 10 people in Nice House by the Sea that were chosen to survive. The most flawed characters, the ones that maybe we're supposed to be looking at and relating to in terms of dysfunction and why did they do that or whatever, are the aliens themselves. Max and Walter, we know there are other houses. We know that those other houses are going to be explored in future issues or future Nice House series, because we know this is a big story. Tynion has said it's a huge story. I think he said minimum 60 issues, or maybe it was Alvaro Martinez Bueno that told me that at New York Comic Con. But that's where I really started to go, hold on a second. Here I am putting myself in the position or the situation of the people that are trapped. What would I do in that situation or whatever? Or should I be more identifying with the aliens? And it's more a question of, what would you do if you had the power? What would you do if you could make the choice? What would you do if you were that kid that could control the ant farm and could choose to shake it up or watch the ants move around? And is it intellectual curiosity to see how people are going to handle the stress and whatever? To go back to your point that you were making earlier about, is this just a psychological experiment and the earth is not destroyed at all? Like, there's so many questions. There's so many layers to this.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting.
And just to build on that point, Walter appeared to choose his 10 people based on love and his love for them and his relationships with them, whereas Max chose her 10 / his 10 based on their skill sets, more so their skill sets than emotion. And so that's also an interesting dichotomy, you know. And is there a right or wrong choice? I mean, does it really matter who you choose if you got 10 people to choose? Does skill set really matter? You know, and because really the irony is that it might end up being that the most technically unskilled group might end up being chosen if the central plot is not a misdirection.
Yeah, and it goes so far beyond that. Again, as much as we've talked about this, we barely scratched the surface. I mean, Nora is such an interesting character. Norm, it's a transgender character. Norm, when we first meet that character, and then it eventually transitions to Nora, and the fact that got revealed a few issues ago that she knew about the change before anybody helped Max design the Nice House by the Lake and knew this was coming and didn't tell anybody, whatever. Like, there's so much to this. There's so much to it. Again, as much as we've talked about it, we've barely scratched the surface. So, you know, Rocky was right. The first thing he said, it's like so hard to sum this up. But for me, the biggest change, the thing that stuck with me time and again after reading this issue, was just that flip of, well, hold on a second. Am I supposed to be identifying with the humans that are trapped, or am I supposed to be identifying with the aliens that had the agency and made the choice? It's an interesting question. But one thing there's no question about is that as far as breaking the rules, the inhabitants of Nice House by the Sea figured out how to break the rules and change their look and whatever a lot quicker than the Nice House by the Sea. And the Nice House by the Lake people may never even have discovered it if they hadn't realized that the Nice House by the Sea people had done it, right? So there is something to be said for being the best and brightest. They did figure out how to manipulate them a little bit quicker. So anyway, yeah, highly recommend it. But I will say this: you can't, if you haven't been reading the Nice House series at all, you can't just go and pick up this issue this week and just dive in. You got to go back and read it from the beginning. Yeah, this isn't a book you can pick. Like so many comics, we've said it in the past. Hey, barrier to entry when we were kids, you know, Detective Comics was on issue 400 and you just went and bought it and you just dove in, you figured out what was going on. You can't do that with the Nice House series. You just can't. You got to go back and read it from the beginning. But luckily, unlike when we were kids, getting back issues for books is never easier. You can go and buy this digitally. You can order it from Amazon, the collected editions, that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely get caught up. Definitely recommend. Definitely in my top 5. All right, up next. No pressure for writer Morgan Hampton, but this book has, I think, been my book of the week 3 issues in a row. Can he make it 4? We'll have to wait and see till the end. But Green Lantern Corps number 15 from the aforementioned Morgan Hampton, art by Fernando Passerin and Auclair Albert, colors by Arif Prianto, letters by Dave Sharp. This is in my top 5. I will say that. Whether or not it's number 1 or not remains to be seen. But it's in your top 5 as well, Rocky. I've been singing its praises. I'm curious what your thoughts on it are this week.
Yeah, I just moved it. It might be out of my top. It's actually just still in my top five. Yeah. Yeah. No, this was again another really good issue. Morgan Hampton does a really good job here of so many characters are being he does a really good job handling so many characters. There's a number of things going on. John Stewart is possessed with, he's battling parallax. He's possessed with parallax. So one of the what Morgan Hampton does very well on the John Stewart side of things is John Stewart is he's got fear. He's got his past. He's wrangling with his past and all the fears of his past, the death of his mother, his sister, and the whole hero's journey, the epic journey that John Stewart's been on from Green Lantern War Journal through PKJ's run to now, even going back 25 years ago with the destruction of Xanthi and the planet, and all of that stuff is really coming to a head here as John Stewart is coming to terms with that. He's battling those fears in his head, his fear of failure, of his fear of failing himself, of failing his sister, his mother, of failing the people of Xanthi. This isn't the first time that John Stewart is a character that's had to confront those fears before. But what Morgan Hampton does here is that, quite frankly, he cram packs that in a very good and succinct way in this issue that for new readers, and especially for readers that just want to enjoy a good science fiction romp and you're jumping onto Green Lantern Corps, you can get the gist of it here, and it's done really well. I want to give a shout out to Fernando Passaran and Eau Claire Albert. The art is fantastic. Saranek Natu, she dons a Sinestro ring, and she, along with Katu, help John Stewart overcome the parallax infestation. Meanwhile, we get the Super Sons, or not the Super Sons, but the Sinister Sons finally show up. I wish they'd play a little bit more of a role here, because you got to remember that they're on the planet here. They're on the planet Koragar, and technically the Sinister Sons basically control it. And they basically show up and they help defeat, play a role in defeating Parallax. And meanwhile, the Manhunters, we got Guy Gardner with that awful haircut of his, and taking on the Manhunters, and a lot happens on that front because the Aya. That character Aya that Jeremy Adams sort of like introduced or brought into the Corps, she does a really good job incapacitating the Manhunters because she can separate. She's got her Green Lantern, almost like her Green Lantern holographic self, and she's got her robotic body itself, and she uses her holographic self to essentially. That she uses for communication. She infiltrates the Manhunters and seemingly controls them, and you think the Manhunters are defeated, and there's just the art's so fantastic. The way that the Manhunters are just utterly destroyed, it's epic. It's like you're watching as close as you can get to a Star Wars movie with the explosions everywhere. The Manhunters seem to be destroyed, but the Manhunters are ultimately setting up a trap. And the trap is that Aya is actually, her body is being taken over by the Manhunters. And the Manhunters, because she's got a superior robotic structure, she's got a superior android-like body, superior to the Manhunter form. And the Manhunters want to duplicate her body and basically duplicate the Manhunter line or lineage. And it's... So that's how it ends. Unfortunately, it was a trap. So Aya now is trapped. The holographic form of Aya is now trapped. She can't get back into her robotic form, her android form, because the Manhunters have taken it over. And anyways, just those are the two big things that are happened. But what really pulls you in is just, this is well-paced. I find it exciting. It's easy to follow. Morgan Hampton seems to be able to handle multiple characters at once. And there's humor, and there's the art is, there's so much detail in the art. Every single panel has detail. Even the explosion, you take an average page where there's an explosion. If you actually squint, you can actually see details of, like in like it's only one of the panels only takes up maybe a quarter of the page, but if you squint, you can see Manhunter body parts in bits and pieces on the page on these, and that's only part of the, like, less than half the page. Anyways, the level of detail. I mean, this is just a beautiful comic book, and you're getting a lot of bang for your buck, more bang for your buck than you get in a lot of comics. And it's still, if you're getting cover A, it's only $3.99. Anyways, this is a really great comic. And to top it off, the backup feature, you get a tease of the all next level Firestorm first issue. So really, guys, if you're going to pick up a comic this week, this is definitely one of them. And if you like science fiction, you like anything like Green Lantern, this is definitely one you'd want to pick up. But I thought this was really well done. And I really like cover A. By the way, Jon Stewart on one side, Guy Gardner on the other. If Guy Gardner wasn't such a visually unattractive character, I'd recommend getting cover A. But what an unattractive character. Man, that haircut, I tell you. Anyways.
Yeah, there's an Atrocitus cover as well that just says Rage and it's coming down. Yeah, there it is right there in the middle. That one is fantastic. I'm not a fan of Rian Gonzalez at all, but she's got a like a Kilowog paper doll cover that's fantastic, and then Ariel Cologne has a sort of a montage cover that's really cool as well. That's the one that's behind me. But yeah, this is in my top 3. So again, everybody, you'll have to wait till the rankings to find out if it has continued to be my book of the week for the 4th month in a row. But it certainly is enjoyable. And much like previous issues, Morgan Hampton is doing such a fantastic job. I'm just blown away by how good this book is, and the fact that this is really his first ongoing title that he's been writing solo. Arguably, you mentioned the journey of Jon Stewart here. Arguably, the entirety of the Geoffrey Thorne run was even though it was Green Lantern, was really just a Jon Stewart story. Really somebody fanboying out and making Jon Stewart like uber powerful or whatever, but still having to put dramatic stakes in there or whatever. But I would argue that even in one issue, Morgan Hampton takes Jon Stewart on more of a journey than what Geoffrey Thorne did in the entirety of his run, and does a cleaner and better job of it. Because like you said, Rocky, this isn't reinventing the wheel here. This is stuff that Jon Stewart has been carrying around for a long time, and various writers have explored it. Don't forget that this isn't even theoretically the one true Jon Stewart, right? This is the one that was, because that one died. That one died in the pages of Green Lantern and early Green Lantern Corps series when it was they were going up against the United Planets and what have you, when Jeremy Adams was still co-writing the book. So this is a Jon Stewart that is a little bit more tentative in a lot of ways, because I think, knowing what we know of Jon Stewart as a character, he's feeling a little bit of that imposter syndrome, along with the guilt for all these things that he's been carrying around, and the knowledge that he wasn't able to save his wife, Katma, in the past, and now we've got a new version of her back as well. So just an incredible job of Morgan Hampton, clearly having learned the lesson from Jeremy Adams, because he's the master at this, right? Going back and mining continuity, and in this case, recent continuity, for the things that other writers have done very, very well. Specifically in this instance with Jon Stewart, going back and mining things that PKJ did, with John's mother being kind of the personality in his power ring, the intellect in his ring. Going back and mining things that that PKJ explored in his Green Lantern War Journal series that focused on Jon Stewart. Going back to, as Rocky mentioned, Jon Stewart's guilt over Xanchi, which is really interesting, which Morgan Hampton's been exploring from the other side of it, from the perspective of the citizens of Xanchi with Fatality recently in the pages of this very book. So it makes a lot of sense what's happening here, and framing it in the context of Parallax wanting to instill fear in Jon Stewart so that it can harvest that fear and feed off that fear and level itself up, grow up, because we know that the all the emotional entities from all the across the spectrum were reincarnated as juvenile versions of themselves, if you will, the ones that were communicating with Guy Gardner and driving him crazy, right? And they obviously want to grow and mature and get back to the level they were at before they were destroyed. That's just their cycle, if you will. So it makes sense for Parallax to do that. It makes sense for John Stewart to be the one that Parallax believes that he can get himself back to that mature level the fastest, right? John Stewart certainly carries around more guilt and has more things to be fearful of from the perspective of Parallax than Sornak Natu, who Sornak Natu is just a badass. I love Sornak. She's always been one of my favorite characters, especially going back to the Sinestro series that was drawn by Brad Walker for the majority of it, written by Cullen Bunn. I love that series. That's where Sornak first debuted. And I love her as a character, and she continues to be badass here, and she's been gone far too long from the pages of Green Lantern comic, and I love the way Morgan writes her. I love the voice that he gives her, what have you. So again, it makes total sense that Parallax would be like, yeah, I'm not going to get much in the way of fear from Sornak because she's a badass. I'm going to, go over to John Stewart. I have much more of a fertile ground to work with there. But again, the journey that Morgan Hampton takes John Stewart on in a single issue is incredible. It's awesome. So I enjoy that, and what we're going to see from that, it's going to continue. Obviously, John Stewart's managed to purge Parallax, but the fallout of that, how it's going to change his relationship with Catman, what have you, it remains to be seen. But a really, really well done. And that would be enough. That would be enough to make this a fantastic book with the gorgeous art from Fernando Passerin, really brightly colored as, traditional superhero comic, which I talk about all the time, which really, really works. Eric Prianto does a fantastic job on that as well. That would be enough. But no, then we have the whole other half of the story with what Guy Gardner's been doing with Aya and Larfleeze and the rest of the team that he's out there in search of these emotional spectrum entities and trying to keep them safe and trying to figure out why they can only communicate with him and how he can get them out of his head so they're not bothering him. We have that part of the story that Rocky kind of summarized with what Aya does in kind of her virtual form, and then turns out the Manhunters just made it a trap. Here again, Morgan Hampton is going back and mining things from the Green Lantern mythos that make perfect sense. Like, once you find out it's a trap and that the Manhunters were stuck, they managed to rebuild their planet, but they were stuck there and had no way off planet. This is like whether you can go all the way back to Millennium, right? The Millennium event in, I think it was 1987 or 88. That the Millennium was the kind of the big summer event or whatever. I think it was 88. And that, no man escapes the Manhunters, and you find out all these Manhunters had sleeper agents all across the DC universe and what have you. It was kind of like that Marvel event, Secret Empire, like decades before Marvel did Secret Empire. But it was so interesting that, going back that far to see the way the Manhunters are duplicitous and conniving and whatever. And Morgan does such a fantastic job. Like, as soon as you find out it's a trap, you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense for the Manhunters to do something like that. Like, it's a perfect idea. And the fact that they see Aya as this sort of pinnacle of technology and something they would strive for, right? Because they were built so long ago. And when you compare that to Aya, how she's kind of the upgrade, right? Like, why wouldn't they want a better, more powerful, more modern, sophisticated robotic body? Of course they want that. So of course they're going to try to trap Aya. Of course they're going to go and make hundreds of copies of her. And of course they're going to use that to try to, once again, take over the universe and impose their sense of order on the universe, which is what the Manhunters are always all about. What a perfect way to bring the Manhunters back as like this huge Omega level threat, not Omega energy, but just this huge threat for the Green Lantern Corps. Like, again, like I go back to learning the lesson, because these are the types of things that Jeremy Adams does really, really well. And maybe I'm giving Jeremy too much credit and not enough credit for Morgan for coming up with these ideas on his own, because I did mention to Jeremy, I think it was last month when Green Lantern came out, I texted Jeremy and I mentioned some idea that Morgan had come up with, because I was kind of curious if I don't know how much Jeremy and Morgan had planned out in the future or whatever. And Jeremy's like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I kind of explained a little further. He goes, oh, that's a fantastic idea. We didn't talk about that at all. So I think a lot of this is just Morgan on his own. But again, learning to go back and mine things, just like he did with Enquar, going back for that little bit from issue 1 with the little, baby liquid villain, whatever, exploding on Guy Gardner, and then turn that into Anquar or whatever. Just a fantastic job. Just a fantastic job. Green Lantern Corps, it is really up there. It's definitely my top 3 of DC books that comes out month in and month out. It's fantastic. The art is gorgeous. This whole idea of the Manhunters, Aya, Razor, her boyfriend, he's going to be freaking out. He's going to be trying to find a way to save her. This is just awesome. This is the sort of storytelling and big ideas and broad spectrum of ideas, because there's so many plates spinning and so many different characters. This is the kind of storytelling that the Green Lantern Corps and the Cosmic Corner of the DC Universe needs. This is what you need to be doing to utilize all these characters, right? I mean, and there's still so many that we haven't seen. We know Kyle Rayner is going to have a big role to play coming up in the regular Green Lantern book. You still have Jessica Cruz that hasn't been utilized much lately, Simon Boz. And I don't say that to say, Jeremy or Morgan is doing doing a terrible job. They're not giving us enough screen time with all the characters. It's an impossibility. There are too many great Green Lantern characters when we're getting the depth of storytelling that we're getting right here to focus on in just 2 books every month. Does that mean I want more than 2? No, because then they start to cannibalize readership and what have you. So I think both Jeremy and Morgan are doing the best they can with a broad group of characters, and they're keeping it interesting. They're keeping me engaged. And I think I told this to Morgan recently. I don't think the Green Lantern corner of the DC Universe has been this engaging and interesting and compelling since back during like Blackest Night during the Jeff John run. So incredible job by the entire creative team. And yeah, we'll have to wait and see if it's my book of the month. All right. Up next, we have Action Comics number 1097, Future Shock. This is from writer Mark Waid. Incredible art from Skylar Patridge, Yvonne Placencia on colors, Steve Wands on letters. I thought the art in this particular issue, it feels like Skylar Patridge leveled up in a lot of ways, especially on that title page where we see the time-traveling villain attacking. And you see, it's such an interesting, like so many times, right, when we call out art, that page right there, we call out art and we're like, oh, it's such a fantastic hero pose for that character. You know what I noticed on this page that really stood out to me, and what an incredible job of art? It's Mary Marvel in maybe the most non-heroic pose I've ever seen, as she's ducking behind some debris as this character is attacking, and she's holding up like a piece of like broken metal, looks like maybe a door from the hangar. Because she's holding onto the handle and she's blocking the energy blast while she's charging up her fist, and she's grimacing, and she's clearly.
It's like a Wonder Woman in No Man's Land there.
Yeah, I just thought it was such a fantastic image. Now, all that being said, this only came in at number 7 for me this week, but this really, number 7 really starts the run of books 7 through 1, including the 2 that are tied for 5, where I just really, really enjoyed it. But it does feel like this is a bit of a setup issue, although we do get a lot of explanation. We know that Booster Gold and Miss Marvel and Martian Manhunter have traveled back in time. They were trying to get to Superman before he disappeared. They've gone back too far. And so this ties in with everything that was happening with the Omega or DCKO, the Omega tournament, what have you. And they're in classic fashion, which you would expect this when it's Mark Waid writing it. They don't want to reveal too much. They don't want to give away things that could potentially change the future to the Superboy. They're aware of it. But this is fun, and it does feel like it fits in with the Mark Waid story that's being told, while still managing to pull in some of the current events of the DCU. So I think that's what this does best. But I'm going to leave it at that, because again, this wasn't in my top 5, but I really, really did enjoy it. And the Skylar Patridge art in this particular issue is really fantastic. So I don't think it's in your top 5 either, Rocky, but anything to add?
No, I actually, this came in at number 9 for me, even though it came in last. It doesn't mean it wasn't a good issue. It was. And Mark Waid's telling stories of Superboy in his past, and he's doing a good job of it. Epoch, the main villain here, ends up stealing the rocket ship that brought Kal-El to Earth at the end of this issue. So that's kind of a big deal, because how is that going to disrupt time and what have you. There was wonderful character moments between Mary Marvel, Martian Manhunter, Booster Gold, meeting the young Kents, interacting with Superboy. They have to pretend that they don't know a lot about him. They can't give any spoilers about his future. And of course, they screw up a little bit, and 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 it's done in a very sort of lighthearted and fun and sincere way, and it just works. And I really get a sense that Mark Waid is just loving this. Part of me feels that if it wasn't for Mark Waid's falling out of, not wanting to work at DC because during Dan Didio's 17-year reign or whatever, and he. Mark that falling out, because I really think Mark Waid should have been working for DC and giving us these types of stories like that, 15 years ago, but better late than never. I personally feel I don't need. These aren't stories that I need anymore. I don't need more stories of Superman as a young man, but they're still fun to read, and they're new. They're old. They're old yet new and relating to a future storyline. And Mark Waid's always good at relating continuity-wise. He plays so well with others. Though, in fact, even the way he gave the origins of Mary, the origins he gave for Martian Manhunter, Mary Marvel, and Booster Gold. I mean, even referencing Mary Marvel's new power set. Being the Amazons, getting her powers from the Amazons, but yet not actually saying that, but just showing that in pictures. Very well done. Just overall, really good stuff. I love the conversation between Mary Marvel and Clark Kent on the roof, and Mary Marvel not quite just adjusting to seeing Clark Kent, Superman in glasses, and just sort of like it's a little bit jarring for her. Maybe she's a little bit starstruck. She's a little bit taken aback to seeing Superman when he was just young and innocent, and still so much of his life was ahead of him, and she knows what the future holds, and she's staring at this ordinary kid, and you get a sense of just how incredible Superman is, because he really did. He started off just like he was just an average kid, and yet he became so much more. And you get a sense of that in the story, and it's just very well done.
Yeah, it is really well done. It's one of the almost tragedies about time travel in a way.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that I would want time travel if I really could. You got to go back. You can't change things, create paradox, whatever. The very Back to the Future, right? Marty knows that Doc Brown's going to get shot, writes him the letter, So anyway, great issue. In another week, it easily would be in my top 5, but this was such a strong week. All right, up next, a book that's in both of our top 5, maybe surprisingly so. Supergirl number 12 from writer and artist handling the art in this issue is Sophie Campbell. Colors by Tamara Bonvillain and letters by Becca Carey. I don't know if it's a speculator alert or not, but we do kind of see it on a couple of the covers. This is the first appearance of cybernetic or cyborg Supergirl. Cyborg Superman has been a character since the death of Superman. Well, I guess I should say since the storyline that immediately followed the death of Superman, which was the reign of the Supermen, and eventually revealed to be a villain, Hank Henshaw, blah, blah, blah. Well, now we're getting the Supergirl counterpart of that, including first a cover appearance on the main cover. And there's a couple of other great covers as well. The Pablo Villalobos cover, which is the one behind me, is especially gorgeous. But yeah, this is in my top 5. I really enjoyed what's happening here with the whole Candor aspect, and also I really enjoyed the interactions we sort of shift back to Earth, if you will. We know Supergirl trapped in Candor. We find out about the Thunder Boy appearance in the first issue or whatever, but we do also get in the very beginning, we get an interaction between Superboy, Connell, and Lena Luthor. They're both worried about Supergirl, and they haven't heard from her in a while and what have you. I enjoyed that interaction as well, and how they may be the answer that Supergirl's looking for in terms of coming to her rescue, basically, because she is trapped, although she does arguably have a better chance of escaping now that she's cybernetic, because it does give her abilities closer to her own abilities that she normally has, which she wouldn't have under kind of the red sun of the city of Candor. But fighting against Black Flame, and it is interesting that the Black Flame rebellion is not that sympathetic, but at the same time, it could be if their behavior wasn't so over the top, especially Black Flame herself. I mean, you can understand why the youth of Kandor are rebelling here. They're not allowed to leave Kandor. And then they find out that even if they were allowed to leave, they would die because they need to stay there. They're genetically sort of trapped there, physically trapped there. So you can understand. And the fact that the Science Council, their parents, the people in positions of authority that you should be able to trust that are looking out for you, are hid this from you and kept it a secret from you all along. Like, you can understand why they're rebelling, but yeah, they're taking it way too far, mostly instigated by this Black Flame character. But just a really, really great job from Sophie Campbell. The art, I love it when Sophie is drawing her own story, because I think she just does this fantastic job. But I am really curious to see how this all plays out. We know, I mean, there's a Supergirl movie coming later this year. Supergirl's not going to stay half robotic. She's not going to stay cybernetic. So the first thing I thought, and this still could be the case, but it would be a little bit bigger. The first thing I thought when she woke up and they're like, oh, you know, in order to save you from the injuries you suffered in the fall that we saw at the end of last issue, we had to, you know, graft on all these cybernetic parts and what have you. I thought, oh, this is going to turn out to be a dream. It could turn out the whole Kandor thing is a dream. But, I mean, how do you, no pun intended because we're talking Kandor, how do you put the genie back in the bottle here? Because right now she's cybernetic. She has robotic parts. So I don't know. Does she go back under the regular yellow sun and heal up, and the cybernetic parts are just kind of?
Well, I think the way I understood, the way he said we were able to save you using cybernetic and bionic augmentation. I know it's unsightly, but I assure you necessary. We can apply cosmetic refinements once you've healed a bit more. So I think she'll eventually heal. That's the way I interpret that. But
yeah, that's entirely possible. Entirely possible that her regular body's still underneath it or whatever. But it was definitely jarring.
It was.
But one of the things I thought when I saw Cyborg Supergirl was like, well, I'm surprised nobody's done this before, right? Cyborg Superman is such a great character.
Yeah.
But again, I'm kind of glad. I wouldn't want, you know how we've complained many times in the past about various. There's too many Flashes. There's too many Wolverines. There's too many. You know, it dilutes the main character when you have it. I don't want a cyborg version of every member of the super family, but one or two, you know, that's fine. And it's been enough time since. I mean, God, Cyborg Superman, that was 1994. So it's been a bit. So anyway, I really enjoyed this. Thought the art's fantastic, color work fantastic. Like the way Supergirl started out, it felt like it sort of wasn't for me. Felt like it was aimed maybe at a younger female audience. Maybe that's still the case. I don't know, but I've been really enjoying it. Basically for the last couple arcs, it's been really, really great. So
yeah.
What are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Yeah, this is getting better and better and better. The art's growing on me, and the story of Sophie Campbell, man, this is a dark tale. I was surprised at the level of violence that was inflicted on Kara by Black Flame last issue. I mean, she was basically killed. I mean, you almost get the sense with the cybernetic body that the cybernetic parts that Kara has is that she's got her eye was ripped out, it looks like. She looks like she was like just brutalized, and she would have died and if she wasn't saved by the Thunder clones, the Thunder clones that were created. And it's... it's, you know, she's even a little bit horrified herself when Kara, you know, she opens up her eyes. It's actually a great scene as she slowly opens up her eyes and she's got a tear in one eye. It's actually quite poignant. And then she looks at herself and says, "What the hell?" And of course, what did you do to me? And she does kind of look like a female Frankenstein. You can imagine this is probably. I'm surprised. I can imagine she's a little bit traumatized from all this, and and the fact that all the politics. I love the politics of it. You know, they're trapped in a bottle, and there's that dichotomy between being parents and wanting to protect your children, but you want to protect your children so much you don't tell your children that you don't tell them, you know, about the truth about the situation, that they can't leave the bottle. And if you hold on too tight, whenever you hold on to something too tightly, you lose it. It's like you gotta you got to give some freedom to your children. You got to trust you, because Kandor is so small. It's basically like a small community and a family, but they've lost sight of that. And Kara really points this out to them. And I agree with you. It's a little over the top with the rebellion of the kids, so to speak. It's very much like generational. The generational divide is very obvious in Kandor, but it's played to great effect, and I don't mind it being exaggerated a bit because it sort of works well enough that it heightens the gravitas of the story, and in particular, I'm even a little bit sympathetic to Black Flame to a certain extent, and I love the battle sequence here. I love. This was the violence. At one point, Kara's cybernetic armor has a life of its own. It automatically tries to use lethal force to protect Kara against Black Flame, and it does it causes harm against Black Flame. And again, lots of violence. These women kick the hell out of each other. Sometimes we men, when we joke about women fighting, sometimes we'll, as a joke, we'll say it's a cat fight, and it's a little bit of a derogatory term because hidden behind it is that we think, well, women don't really fight very well, right? It's a cat fight, right? This is a fight. This isn't a cat fight. These are women that are going nuts, and and Kara normally holds back because she's just she's the good person, but her machine that she's wearing, the cybernetic machinery, is causing her to fight whether she wants to or not using lethal force, and it's just awesome. And then at the end, Team Thunder shows up to attack Black Flame as the issue ends to carry on next issue, and I thought this was just excellent. This made my top 3, actually. I loved it that much this week. I thought this blew me away, and absolutely speculator alert, and almost every single all the covers are just great. I mean, all the variant covers. I mean, DC is just kicking ass on variant covers, and I know I might have to change my tune and go from a variant cover guy who complains about them to loving them. But my budget. Every time I buy a variant cover, another indie comic dies. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Come on, DC.
I agree. I haven't even been buying. Mostly, it's a situation where I'm running out of space. As I bought $400 books or 47-cent books a couple weeks ago. But yeah, I haven't been buying Supergirl physically, but I can't not get that Pablo Villalobos cover. It is so gorgeous. It's fantastic. So, all right. Up next, we have Absolute Green Lantern number 13, episode 13 in the Zero Zone, written by Al Ewing, Eleonora Carlini on art, Yvonne Placencia on colors, Lucas Gattoni on letters. This comes in last for me. Number 9. I did not like it. I trying to keep an open mind, trying to be objective about this. Like, is this a good story? So the problem I have with it is far and away, even in my mind, more than Absolute Martian Manhunter. Absolute Green Lantern has been inscrutable. It's been the series I have the most, because here's the thing. I think Martian Manhunter, it's supposed to be esoteric, and I don't think Absolute Green Lantern is necessarily supposed to be esoteric, but it comes across that way. Because, hey, guess what, Al Ewing? You know all the concepts. You know the Bible. You know of your of your series. You know all the ideas and where you're going or whatever. But we as readers don't. So we're relying on you through the story and through your direction to your artist, through the script, to convey the information to us. And if you don't convey that information to us, then we are lost. And you've introduced some really radical, out there concepts, and some of them I've been able to grasp, and some maybe I haven't. Maybe they've gone over my head, or I've just missed the idea. And maybe there are other people out there smarter than me that are reading this that understand them better than I do. But I always feel a little bit lost when I read Absolute Green Lantern. So what do I want from this series? Well, I want some answers. I want to understand what's going on. I love Green Lantern. Look, the regular Green Lantern series and Green Lantern Corps are two of my favorite books at DC right now. I just went on and on about the latest issue of Green Lantern Corps in this very episode. So clearly I love the idea of Green Lanterns, and I want to enjoy this. So what do we get in this issue? We don't get any answers. We don't get any appearances of any of the characters that we've seen before in terms of Joe Mullen or the absolute version of Simon Boz or Cameron Chase or Hal Jordan or Guy Gardner. None of them. Instead, we're on the planet Ran with maybe it's absolute Adam Strange, maybe it's absolute Shade the Changing Man, maybe it's absolute amalgamation of both of them. And we do see the absolute Sinestro show up again, and we're introducing whole new concepts and ideas, which are also esoteric and inscrutable. Enough, Al Ewing. Enough. There's a reason I stopped watching the show Lost, because every time I watched Lost, I'd finish the episode with more questions than I started with, and I started getting frustrated. It's like, why am I torturing myself? I don't get. At some point, you don't care anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the danger. I think that Al Ewing he's getting dangerously close to that line where I'm not going to read this anymore because I don't care. Too many questions with zero answers. So I tried to take a step back and go, okay, so forget that this is called Absolute Green Lantern. Forget the critique and the criticism that I haven't gotten enough answers about what the hell is going on in Absolute Green Lantern in terms of the Green Lantern concept. Let me just look at this in a vacuum, right? Like, this isn't Absolute Green Lantern. This is just a comic book story. Do I think it's a good comic book story? I kind of don't. Again, because as a reader, there's not enough hook here to pull me in to keep me. I'm shown a lot of action and I'm told a lot of things, but I don't get enough information about the motivation of this absolute Shade Strange, we'll call him Adam the Changing Man. I don't know what you want to call the amalgamation. I don't get enough. I don't get enough about him and his motivations and why he's following the orders of Sinestro or whatever to really be able to relate to the character. And then he appears to get killed anyway. So then I'm like, why was I even bothering to give a shit? So to me, this issue is a complete failure. And Absolute Green Lantern is towing the line of being a complete failure. And I don't want it to fail. I want to like it. Also, was a huge fan of Eleonora Carlini when she did that Boom series with Ryan Parrott, Vicarious. I thought the art was gorgeous and it was awesome, and that's a great series.
Yeah.
I don't think the art works here. Her style's a little too loose. It's a little too messy. Because again, we've talked about this before. When I think when you have an overly complicated story, especially one that engenders all these questions, we're trying to understand what the heck's going on. You need a simpler art style. Don't make me struggle to understand the story, and make me struggle to interpret what's going on in the art as well. You know, if it's a really simple story, then you can give me some overly complicated art, and that can augment the story and make it feel like it's a little bit more than it is, right? But here we have, in my mind, a little bit of a complicated art style, a very complicated story, and it fails completely. I would rank this at like number 13 out of 9. I disliked it. I disliked it that much. Like, wow. I really, like, I finished reading this and I was just like, what a. I texted you and Steve, and I think I used the words steaming pile of a certain emoji. Like, I'm really struggling with Absolute Green Lantern, man. Like, wow. Oh my God, what the heck is going on? But anyway, Rocky had a completely different perspective. So let's hear what you had to say about it.
Well, first of all, I actually, here's the irony. I'm at this is hovering around number 1 for me this week. That's how diametrically different I view this comic than you. But here's the irony is I actually will I love your analogy of Lost, because I absolutely agree with you that if we keep getting issues like this where we're not getting answers, I just happen to have a little bit more patience than you. That's all. My tolerance string is just a little longer than yours. But if we get another 5 or 6 issues like this where we're going off on tangents, I'm going to be where you're at. Okay, I'm just not there yet. Could I end up where you're at? Yes. But I enjoyed this issue because I like Shade the Changing Man. I liked because I still have a tether as to what's going on, because what's happening in the story is this, and I'll just give, because leading up to this issue, we have Jolene Ray and Tomar Ray are coming from Earth. They're heading toward Mogo to confront Mogo. And you're right that we're still a little bit confused exactly what do the reds do and the greens, and the gold is enlightenment, and then we got the black stars, and then we got the controller of Mu, who I think is the Sinestro character, and the controller of Mu has sends out these black stars across the galaxy to populate these planets, and he's got overseers just like this character, this lead character, Rack Shade, who is basically, he wears this M vest, and he's got black stars working under him, and Sinestro is talking to this overseer, and he's saying, look, I want you to intercept the Green Lantern and Tomar Ray, when they come in your sector of the galaxy. I want you to use the black stars. And that it's the black stars that serve the controller, that serve Sinestro, the controller of Mu. And they represent chaotic action, and they have pure will, and they seek peace through domination and destruction. That's what the Black Stars do. And the Kilowog, the Absolute Kilowog, was a Black Star in one of the earlier issues. What I found interesting here is that this M-Vest, that Shade the Changing Man, who looks like Adam Strange. He looks like Adam Strange. He's on the planet Ran, but he's actually Rack Shade is his name. He's Shade the Changing Man. So he's not actually Adam Strange, although he looks like him. He actually is responsible he actually kills Professor Sardan in this issue, whose daughter is Alana, who's the wife of Adam Strange in the mainstream universe. Well, why does he end up killing Professor Sardan? He actually has Alana, Sardan's own daughter, ends up killing him because she's brainwashed. She's brainwashed by the Black Stars, and what's interesting about this is actually, it's a speculator alert. This is the absolute Manhunters show up in this issue, but it's in the mainstream universe. We have the saying is no man escapes the Manhunters, but in this case, it's no man escapes the M Zone. And it's the M Zone where a lot of these prisoners are, where a lot of people are captured, and they're trapped in the M Zone, and the M Zone can make you crazy. And what Professor Zardan did when he created his Zeta Beam, the Zeta Beam was a communication device meant to really pull people out of the zone, but he didn't actually reveal that, because the overseer wanted Zardan to tell him what was the Zeta Beam for? Why did you create this? Well, Zardan was ostensibly using it to try to, he thought his daughter Alana was trapped in the M Zone. It was a way to retrieve somebody from the M Zone, which is where the Black Stars, I think, where the controller of Mu, where the Black Stars store their prisoners, I think. And no man can escape the M Zone. Well, they use the Zeta Beam, and it ends up that Alana, the Zeta Beam is activated, and it pulls this new character out of the M Zone called Emily Hawk. She's an OSS agent from World War II Earth, I think. Now, I Googled Emily Hawk. I think she's a brand new character. She's not related to the DC's Black Hawks. I thought maybe she was a Black Hawk. I thought maybe she was a character from DC's history. If anybody knows who Emily Hawk is, I think she's a new character. If I'm wrong, by all means, people let me know in the chat or correct me. But she ends up coming out of the M Zone, and she ends up actually killing the overseer, killing the Rack Shade, the changing man, who people will think is Adam Strange, but he's not. But he ends up, that changing man ends up getting killed, and then she ends up getting sucked back into the M Zone. So meanwhile, what we don't see, but we only have reference in this issue, and this is part of your frustration, is while this is going on, we know that the Black Stars have been ordered to attack Jolene Mulin and Thomas Ray, who are heading toward Mogo, and the middle point is going to be above the planet of Rand. Mogo is going to be confronting Thomas Ray and Jolene Mulin, and there's going to be a battle. Now, exactly what's going on, I'm not really sure, but we're starting to get a sense of what the absolute cosmology is like in the absolute universe. We know that the absolute universe is filled with omega particles, where people generally side there's more an inclination to maybe be dark and bad than maybe good. So it's more difficult it's more challenging. It's a little bit more difficult to win the day if you're a good guy than a bad guy in the absolute universe. We also know that in the cosmology, in the universe outside of the absolute Earth, we know that there's the black stars. And these black stars are spread around the universe to basically to create peace through domination and destruction by the controller of Mu, who is, I believe, that Sinestro-looking character that we know is in the absolute universe here. So, yeah, that's a lot of stuff, and it's getting to the point here where at some point, I still find it interesting, and I'm still kind of engaged, and I think it's cool. I just wish Al Ewing would slow down, just pull the brakes a little bit. It's like he's in hyperdrive. Come out of hyperdrive. You're in hyperspace, Al. Just come out of hyperspace for a bit and enjoy the scenery for a bit, because we see the stars flying by. Let's slow down and enjoy some of the scenery and get to know some of these characters just a little bit more before we jump to another set of planets or characters or mythologies. So I find myself in the awkward position of both agreeing with you, but also really enjoying this issue because I really like the characters introduced. And so I enjoyed this. And maybe it's because it's so different, because it's like the DC universe, but it isn't. Al Ewing is still having I get a sense that he's having fun, but I think he's having too much fun because, like you say, I think he's forgetting that, hey, man, you have an audience here. Don't leave us behind. You're telling a great story, but we're not in your head, right? We're in ours.
Yeah, you might be telling. Yeah, you might be telling a great story. I don't know. I can't understand it.
Yeah.
But, and I might have been, more inclined to kind of be where you are. If the thing that really threw me was Rockshade getting killed. Because I'm trying to understand, I'm trying to figure it out. He clearly, as I said, is an amalgamation of Adam Strange and Shade the Changing Man, who Shade the Changing Man is from the Meta Zone, everybody, and he uses a Meta Vest illegally to escape and come to Earth, whatever. And so that's the M Zone. But at the same time, the M Zone here feels a little bit like the Phantom Zone in a lot of, Ron is using
that's
it as
exactly
the
right.
Zone.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
They're sending, political prisoners there. So it's like, okay, you're amalgamating Shade the Changing Man with Adam Strange, but you're also amalgamating the Meta Zone from Shade the Changing Man with the Phantom Zone. So it gets really muddy really quick. And maybe that's okay because it's absolute universe and you get a chance to play with some of these toys. But to your point of slow down, don't use up all the toys too quick. I think that's the danger of what's happening in Absolute Batman. We're getting Absolute Two-Face Absolute Scarecrow. Right. Yeah, right. Coming up soon, and we're getting a new
look for Two-Face.
Yeah, new look for Two-Face. But again, it just seems like it's all happening too fast. Like save something for later. But yeah, the fact that I could have been on board, but then as I'm trying to figure this out, as I'm investing in these characters, then as you mentioned, the Emily character that escapes briefly from the M Zone, then kills Adam Strange, Adam Shade, the Changing Man, whatever he's called, kills him. So I'm like, wait, here I am trying to figure out this guy and understand his motivations. Then you just kill him. Like, what's going on? So yeah, frustrating. I look forward to, sticking my foot in my mouth and going back later and saying, oh my God, this was a great issue for what it set up that comes later or whatever, when Al Ewing makes it all make sense. But can he? I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
All right. Last book we're going to talk about in detail, Emperor Aquaman, number 16. This is from writer Jeremy Adams, John Timms on art, Rex Locus on colors, Dave Sharp on letters. This is in my top 3. Really, really enjoyed it. I think it's in your top as well, Rocky. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, it's in. It's not in my top three, but it is in my top five. I quite enjoyed it, and yeah, it's. I like the fact. I mean, I love the premise because the big question for me is, okay, Jeremy Adams, you've made Aquaman an emperor. Okay, that's cool, but now what? So how exactly? Like, I think emperor is a very. It's an intimidating term because Aquaman is kick-ass, but when you call yourself an emperor, there's a little bit of narcissism in there. There's a little bit of presumptiveness, and there's an air of aggressiveness in that title. Let's be blunt, but I love the explanation here. I love it's explained that in order to spread, I guess, peace and justice throughout the blue, which encompasses, of course, the entire universe. Aquaman wants to set up basically lighthouses throughout the blue, throughout the universe. And so that various worlds that have obviously oceans and what have you, and they need help, that he can help them. And because really he's not just king of the seven seas, he's literally emperor. He's Emperor Aquaman. He's Emperor of the Blue. He's not Emperor of the Seven Seas. He's Emperor of the Blue. And it's very interesting. And I love the controversy. It's a potential controversy there because, again, that's pretty arrogant to make the presumption you're Emperor of the Blue, and that goes throughout the entire universe. At some point, there's somebody who's going to want to challenge him for that mantle. And we even get that's even teased at the end here where Black Manta shows up. But I like the fact that even King Shark swears allegiance to Emperor Aquaman here because as a fallout from the DCKO tournament, because King Shark was also a contestant, he has had visions. All the contestants, when Superman won the King Omega tournament, he gave up that power, and then Superman disappeared. The Omega energy returned to the contestants and gave them all visions of the future. And Aquaman's had a vision of the future. We don't exactly know what that vision was. King Shark also had a vision of the future, and his vision, he knows that all King Shark really knows is that that Aquaman has a role to play, and he's decided that toward the fulfillment of his vision, it requires him to swear allegiance to Aquaman, and that's what King Shark does. And there's some really epic battles here. And as the central point of this story, the way this narrative is told, is they end up going to a planet that has prophesized the coming of Aquaman. To basically rescue them and to free them. And it's this planet essentially it's kind of funny, it's a planet of bugs. And Jan, the Wonder Twin, actually ends up, I was a little bit, I threw up a little bit in my mouth. Jan, the Wonder Twin, found one of these bugs attractive, and it's like, just because the bug looks like they have a nice chest, it's still an insect you're attracted to, for God's sakes. But in any event, I like the plot here. They're at this other planet. They're wined and dined by the governors and by the leaders of this planet. But ultimately they're being set up. They're being set up because they want to basically, I guess, take the power of the blue for themselves, or whatever the case might be. And long story short, I mean, is that Aquaman ultimately utilizes his power in such a way that he actually freezes. They're actually a race that's infected by a parasite, and he freezes the parasite because he can control water anywhere, and he basically uses it to freeze the parasite and freeing up this race, and this race is essentially saved, and all because of Aquaman, and they're very grateful for him, and the prophecy is fulfilled, and it's very well done. And then ultimately at the end, if we were wondering what happened to his Aquaman's or Mira's mother, where'd she go? Well, she's looking for an ally in her war against Aquaman, and she can't believe that somebody could hate Aquaman even more than her until, of course, she meets Black Manta, and that's the cliffhanger ending. But I thought this was very well done, just excellent. Art was fantastic. John Timms on the art, Rex Locus on the colors, just really great. My favorite page by far, John Timms draws an amazing killer shark. Yeah, just amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So definitely in my top three. I agree with everything you're saying, Rocky, and I'll take it even one step further. My favorite page of art was also the King Shark showing up there, and this idea of the Shiver Aquaman having his royal guard be these sharks is such an awesome idea, and so very much Jeremy Adams. And even the idea of which this is not the most original idea, right? Like having it reminded me a little bit of that very famous or maybe infamous episode of Star Trek where there are these kind of bug-like creatures that are infecting everybody, and it's really gross with like some body horror with their necks pulse out, whatever. And at the end, their heads explode or whatever. Like I don't even think they should show it in syndication because it's really gross, and it stands out as a Star Trek: The Next Generation episode because it's so different and so horrific, in such a sort of body horror, almost David Cronenberg type episode. But it's probably knowing Jeremy Adams is probably one of his favorite, and that's the idea here. A little bit tropey, right? Like these insects that arguably aren't necessarily that attractive to begin with, and they're affected by these parasitic worms that are controlling them or whatever. And as you mentioned, Aquaman's able to freeze the water, and they're keeping them in stasis. I love that. Also, they're keeping them in stasis. They don't necessarily begrudge that they're doing this. They're just trying to survive. But they're going to try to find them another world where they can survive. So again, very Jeremy Adams idea, like this invasion of the body snatchers type situation, which is great. And Aquaman being this sentinel, this emperor, this avatar of the blue that's out there, not just defending and fighting against threats on planet Earth, but also cosmologically. That's really awesome. But the leveling up of Aquaman and the way Jeremy Adams has done it so subtly, where if you don't stop and take a step back and go, wait a second here, look at the way Aquaman is treated in his own book. Look at the way that we as readers are accepting his power level. He's become one of the most powerful beings in the DC universe, and we're fine with that. We're good. I haven't heard anybody pushing back on that because it's all explained very well by the narrative that Jeremy's been telling since issue 1. But even the way that other characters in the comic itself, very meta, which is similar to what Joshua Williamson did on Superman with Superboy Prime a few issues ago. But very meta, right? Even here we are with King Shark, this classic villain who is showing up to pledge his loyalty and fealty to Aquaman. Like Aquaman has leveled up. Like people aren't questioning Aquaman, and you could make the argument, well, he's Emperor of Atlantis. They weren't necessarily questioning him anyway, but maybe not overtly. But he'd get the side eye. There certainly were different classic Atlantean characters that were always like, I don't know, Arthur, he's a half breed. He shouldn't be ruling, whatever. Nobody questions Aquaman. He has leveled up in his own book. He stands with a level of respect that, in my mind, he's never really had before. He's not a joke. I don't think anybody would make jokes or crack a joke about Emperor Aquaman. Not because he couldn't take the joke, but just because, again, he's leveled up. He's such a fantastic character. He's almost reached that level of respect that like Superman gets. Or not necessarily the respect out of fear, the way people fear Batman because he can kick their ass, but just out of, they look at him as he's somebody who can get things done. He's somebody that's really powerful. He's somebody that's competent in a way that Aquaman has never had that presence on the comic page before, at least to me. So for me, that's an incredible accomplishment beyond just, hey, this is a great individual issue. It's got great art. It's awesome. And King Shark, in a way, is just indicative of what I'm talking about, that leveling up of Aquaman. Here we go with a classic DC villain who has so much respect for who Aquaman has become that he wants to be a part of his inner circle. He wants to help Aquaman accomplish his goals and whatever. Like, what an incredible job by Jeremy Adams in leveling up a character. And like I said, he's become one of my top 5, easily my top 5 DC characters, maybe my top 3 characters in the hands of Jeremy Adams. Just absolutely incredible. And I can't wait to see where it goes from here. John Tim's art, next level as well. And I was just about to mention that there's a couple of banger covers. I ordered this one. It's Nathan Zerdy. There's another one by Ariel Diaz that has Mira on it. That's gorgeous as well. So yeah, DC really has some fantastic variant covers this week. So yeah, Aquaman definitely in my top 3. I really enjoyed it. I think I read it twice. It was so good. Because it was the last book I read, and then I immediately kind of went back and did an art reread, and then I reread it again a couple days later. So anyway, that does it for the books we're going to talk about in detail, everybody. There are a few other books that are out this week. We have a facsimile edition of Jimmy Olsen 115. We have a second printing of the Absolute Superman number 15 with the Juan Ferreira cover in foil. That's Superman with the flame wings. There's also a facsimile edition of Action Comics 454. I don't know the significance of that issue. I don't know the significance of Jimmy Olsen 115 either, for that matter.
Yeah, I don't know.
The Action Comics 454, I think they're reprinting it just because of the cover. It's Superman, just handfuls of hamburgers, shovel them in his mouth as fast as he can. We also have some Absolute books that are getting reprints as well, in addition to the Juan Ferreira Absolute Superman 15, which I think that's more of a cover reprint. But 16, Absolute Superman 16 is also getting a reprint. Absolute Wonder Woman 16 is getting the second print. They're using the same cover because I think it's a Zatanna cover. So
it's actually it's a new cover. That's why I'm getting it.
There's an Absolute Wonder Woman 16 second print.
Oh,
it has
60.
the exact same cover.
Okay, right.
As one that the main cover A from before, and then there's also a foil reprint of Absolute Superman 16, the Guillaume March foil Virgin variant is getting a reprint as well.
Nice.
And then in addition to that, there's a brand new cover for Mark Brooks for Absolute Wonder Woman 16. So there's 3 different Absolute Wonder Woman issue 16s that are getting a reprint, plus a new printing of Absolute Superman 15 that's getting the second print, and Absolute Superman 16 that has this cover A as well, and I think that's it. So there are some reprints coming out this week. If you missed some Absolute Superman or Absolute Wonder Woman titles, especially the ones with the Zatanna cover, I think people might be looking out for those. And I did order that Mark Brooks cover because it looks awesome. And I pretty much order all Mark Brooks covers, but I definitely had to get my hands on that. All right, not a ton of collected editions this week, so let me get them in front of me. We have Batman: The Dark Knight Returns getting a compact edition. This is the classic Frank Miller story. It's getting reprinted in that smaller size for $10. So if you've never read it, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's overrated because it's influenced so many comic creators of this generation. But I never really enjoyed it. But then I'm also the guy that never really saw the big deal about Watchmen either. So anyway, just in time for the Supergirl movie coming up later this year, Supergirl Being Super from Mariko Tamaki and Joel Jones is getting a new trade paperback. And then the 5-year later version of the Legion of Superheroes has its Volume 2 Omnibus coming out this week. Also, it's, 1,328 pages for $150. It includes a ton of DC Legion of Superhero 5 years later run. This is when the beer bombs, Mary and Tom, who were fans of the Legion, that became writers of it, which is so interesting to me, along with some Mark Waid work. A lot of Stuart Immerman art in that as well. Some Kurt Busiek issues also. So, yeah. Fans of the Legion, 5 years later, you definitely know that run.
Yeah.
All right. So that does it for collected editions this week. Let me get our rankings in front of us. And I did make one. Well, I almost made a change, and then I decided not to. And I still, all right, I'll just get to it. All right. Coming in at number 9 or number 13, if you will. I have Absolute Green Lantern number 13. Just really didn't like it for all the reasons I said. Coming in number 8, I have Sirens Love Hurts number 3. Number 7, Action Comics number 1097. Coming in at number 6. I don't have a number 6 because I have 2 number 5s. Because I wanted them both to be in my top 5. So tied at number 5, I have Bleeding Hearts number 3 and Nice House by the Sea number 9. I just couldn't have one of those out of my top 5. I really, really enjoyed them both. Supergirl number 12 comes in at number 4. At number 3, I have Firestorm number 1. And then I struggled with this and struggled. And I almost went back and said, okay, I'm not going to have 2 number 5s. I'll have 2 number 1s instead.
Mm-hmm.
But I ultimately I decided to go with my first thought when I first read everything one time. Green Lantern Corps number 15 comes in at number 2. But man, it's like a 1.5. It was so close to being my book of the week once again. But I went with Emperor Aquaman number 16. And ultimately, I one of the fallbacks I do when I'm having trouble ranking things is I ask myself the question, okay, which one would I rather reread right now? And Emperor Aquaman just barely eked out over Green Lantern Corps number 15. But if somebody were to just watch this episode and not hear and stop watching before I did my rankings, and just based on my excitement when talking about the books, they might think that Green Lantern Corps 15 was my number 1. So that's why I almost changed it. But I'm gonna put it at number 2. I'll give Morgan something to strive for to get back on top with his next issue. But I don't think I could go wrong picking either one of those books as my book of the week, because I think they're both fantastic. But anyway, those are my rankings.
That's great choice. Good choice. We only differ substantially more with the Absolute Green Lantern 13, but my rankings are coming in at number 9 for me was Action Comics 1097. Number 8, Bleeding Hearts 3. Number 7 was Nice House by the Sea. Number 9. Coming in at number 6, and this is where I changed. Number 6, I put Fury of Firestorm number 1. My number 5, I put Green Lantern Corps at number 5. Emperor Aquaman came in at number 4 for me. Number 3, Absolute Green Lantern 13. Number 2, Sirens, Love Hurts number 3. And coming at number 1, the first time ever, I can't believe how much I enjoyed it, was Supergirl number 12. And I know that might shock some people, but I just really enjoyed that. It just hit me in the right way, and I had to go with it. And again, it was a fantastic week, and I could come up with reasons to change that, but you know what? I thought no, I have to look at the overall thing. I also look at improvement. When I think of how this series began, I really think Sophie Campbell. I really think she, for me, and I know this hasn't been said by others, but for me, I feel she's on a journey like Jeremy Adams was. She's improved that much as a writer, where she keeps pulling me in more and more and more. And at first, I was dismissive of it. I thought, you got lucky. It's like, no, it's not luck. I mean, after we're on issue 12 and it keeps getting better, and no, she's done a really good job here, and she's pulling me in, and she deserves this number 1 spot in my rankings. So it's good, it was a fantastic week. All the comics I thought were good this week, again, I enjoyed Absolute Green Lantern still so far.
Yeah, what's interesting is that's not the biggest gap. So you have it at 3, I have it at 9. Now, granted, I'd rank it lower if there were other books, probably. I can't say that, 100%, because I don't know, maybe other books would be terrible also. But yeah, 3 9. So that's a gap of 6. But Sirens Love Hurts is also a gap of 6, because I have it at 8 and you have it at 2.
Yeah.
But then, most everything else is relatively close. So
I love the sexy. What can I say? Babs Tarr. I mean, woo.
Yeah. Fair enough. So anyway, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Thanks for joining, as always. Don't forget to head over to the Comic Source YouTube channel for all the other content that comes out every week. And obviously this comes out on our podcast feed as well for the Comic Source. If you're curious about that, you've stumbled across this and you're like, I'd love to listen, but I don't have time to sit there and watch. Yeah, all the content is available on the podcast, audio only, whatever podcast platform or app you use. Just do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe, and thousands and thousands of hours of listening pleasure to go back and explore. But conversely, if you have discovered us on the podcast and you want to check out the art and see our smiling faces every week, the DC Spotlight comes out pretty much every Tuesday night. You can check it out Wednesday before you get to the comic shop on Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom, ! On YouTube. And then all the other Comic Source content comes out on the Comic Source YouTube channel, including Spawn Daily, creator interviews, reviews of at least one Marvel book a week, one indie book a week. And I do encourage everybody to go check out Royals, my interview from last week, which is an Image comic that came out. A little crime noir, a little science fiction, and a heck of a lot of fun. So we appreciate everybody joining as always, and we will talk to you next time.
Catch you later.